You don't think the Commonwealth has a role to negotiate treaties?
No, I didn't say that. I said that's not in the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Okay, so do you think the Commonwealth has a role on negotiating treaties?
Patricia.
You're listening to ABC RN Breakfast, and my guest is the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. I want to change the topic, Prime Minister. Your new draft national platform says Labor will take steps to implement all three elements of the Uluru Statement. And the Uluru Statement isn't just about the voice, it's also about treaty and truth. Do you support a treaty, Prime Minister?
Look, what is before the Australian people is a referendum which is about voice, which is the first part of the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
That's right, it's the first part.
Recognition, it's about listening, and it's about better results.
Do you support a treaty?
I look forward to, well, the processes are occurring.
But federally, you've committed to the Uluru Statement.
And it's not a treaty.
Perhaps potentially many treaties, right?
Yeah, that's occurring. That's like saying, do you support the sun coming up? It's occurring in Victoria, in your state, Patricia. It's occurring in Queensland. It's occurring in the Northern Territory.
Prime Minister, I don't mean to be rude, but I will say, I mean, the Uluru Statement, you rightly pointed out very clearly that there are three parts of it, and right now you're focused on the voice. But in this term of Parliament, if the voice passes, will you move to trying to negotiate a treaty or treaties?
No, Patricia, because that's occurring with the states. So
you're saying the Commonwealth will never have a role with treaties?
Right now. No.
It does reveal that the national platform that will be taken to the conference party room states that Labor supports all elements of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, including a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament, a Makarrata Commission for agreement making, and a national process of truth-telling. But as we heard on Bedfordham just a couple of weeks ago, Anthony Albanese refused to link the voice referendum with the treaty. Here's a quick reminder of those comments.
As part of the Uluru Statement, we have a voice, we have treaty, we have truth-telling. As part of a treaty, won't there be compensation? If there is, I mean, that's not totally unexpected.
This isn't about a treaty, Ben.
But there are three parts of the Uluru Statement.
Yeah, and this is not...
So you're talking about the voice.
This is not about a treaty.
But as part of treaty, which we guess will be a following step...
This is not about a treaty.
Do you foresee that compensation would be paid?
This is not about a treaty.
And here was the PM on this issue today.
Do you support a treaty?
I look forward to... Well, the processes are occurring.
But federally, you've committed to the Uluru Statement.
And it's not a treaty. It's like saying, do you support the sun coming up? It's occurring.
Bridget, what's your response to the Prime Minister's seemingly flip-flopping, backflipping on whether or not the party supports a treaty?
Yeah, it's very difficult to lead in the face of negative polls, and the Prime Minister has committed 34 times to implementing the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. That includes treaty. It also includes a percentage of GDP for repatriations, etc., etc. And so for him to now be walking away from that, and we heard this morning his backflip, shows that he's not prepared to actually stand up for what he believes in. He either believes in implementing Uluru Statement from the Heart in full, or he doesn't. And he can't seem to tell the Australian people the truth. He's bought the T-shirt, he's gone to the concert. We all know that this treaty is going to be part of the voice process. The voice is being set up to implement treaty into the future. So for me, as always, Shari, it's a very respectful no on the voice to Parliament because of the unintended consequences that it will bring. And we've got a Prime Minister that cannot be straight on this issue with the Australian people.
Is important. Are you still committed to Commonwealth's negotiating treaties?
Patricia, well, where does it say that? It doesn't even say that in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. It doesn't say that. It doesn't speak about the Commonwealth negotiating treaties. It doesn't say that, Patricia. So don't get sucked into...
I'm not sucked into anything. I just want to know what your position is.
What our position is that there will be a referendum.
Yesterday, in an interview with Patricia Cavallis on Radio National, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese misled his party's support for a federal treaty with Indigenous Australians, and he continues to mislead Australians about the obvious link between his voice and his federal treaty process. He has contradicted his own words and those of his current ministers. As Shadow Minister Linda Burney said, an Albanese Labor government will also make Makarrata Treaty and truth-telling a priority. It will work with the Voice to Parliament when it is established. With respect to treaty, it would recommend a framework for federal treaty making. As Shadow Minister Mark Dreyfus said, Labor has committed to honouring that request by establishing in government, as a matter of priority, a Makarrata Commission. The Commission's oversight of treaty would include developing a framework for federal treaty making. As opposition leader Anthony Albanese has said, an Albanese Labor government will establish a Makarrata Commission as a priority. It will work with the Voice to Parliament when it is established. The Makarrata Commission's treaty responsibilities will initially include recommending a framework for federal treaty making. And on the 12th of the 2nd, 2020, in the House of Representatives, Anthony Albanese also said, the voice must be followed by truth-telling. Truth
Senator
must be
Hanson,
followed.
please resume your seat. Senator Polley, on a point of order.
Just a reminder through you, Chair, of the correct title for the Prime Minister.
Senators are reminded to use the appropriate titles for members and senators. Senator Hanson.
The voice must be followed by truth-telling. Truth must be followed by a Makarrata Commission. It's a path to a national treaty that acknowledges the pre-existing rights of peoples in land where sovereignty was never ceded, and acknowledges that we are on what is Aboriginal land, always will be, always was, always will be. That is not deserving of Prime Minister, and as far as I'm concerned, he's nothing but a coward and should be thrown out of this. He's a bloody liar.
Senator Hanson, resume your
What's
seat.
recognition?
You don't think the Commonwealth has a role to negotiate treaties?
No, I didn't say that. I said that's not in the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Okay, so do you think the Commonwealth has a role on negotiating treaties?
Patricia, what the Commonwealth has a role in is the referendum that will put to the Australian
So let's pull up this video and I'll play it for you guys now.
When we have a constitutionally enshrined Voice to Parliament,
Isn't about a treaty, Ben.
But there are three parts of the Uluru Statement.
Yeah, and this is
So
not.
you're talking
this
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
and we advance on the process of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, including truth and treaty.
But as part of treaty, which we
This
guess will
is-
be a following step,
This is not about a
do you
treaty.
To find courage to begin the process of truth-telling and national treaty making.
foresee that compensation would be
This
paid?
is not about a treaty.
The path to national treaty. Agreements that acknowledge the pre-existing rights of a people in a land where sovereignty was never ceded.
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
A national process of truth-telling, agreement and treaty making.
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
As a priority, Labor will establish a Makarrata Commission with responsibility for truth-telling and treaty,
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
and it will work with a Voice to Parliament. This is how we can go forward.
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
And treaty making.
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
Truth, without which we can never be all that we can as a nation. And treaty,
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
a clarion call for truth, treaty and voice.
You're talking
This
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
Voice, truth, treaty. Labor is committed to all three.